Landlord refuses deposit. I called the fire department. The chipped paint on the front door was the first sign. Not a glaring red flag, more like a yellow one fluttering gently in the breeze. Still, Sarah had squeezed my hand, a silent "Are you sure about this?" As Mr. Henderson fumbled with the keys. The apartment itself was fine. Decent size, good light, and a location that was rapidly appreciating. That's what had sold us. Affordability was becoming a myth in this city, and this place, a 2-bedroom in a slightly rundown but up-and-coming neighborhood, was a steal, or so we thought. Mr. Henderson, a man who looked like he hadn't cracked a smile since Eisenhower was in office, shuffled us through the place. He pointed out charming original features code for ancient appliances and drafty windows. He mumbled something about responsible tenants and no parties. He definitely sized us up as the responsible, quiet types. We probably reeked of graduate school and impending student loan debt. The lease was standard boilerplate, except for a few clauses that seemed a little overzealous. Things like a $1.25 charge for each light bulb replaced, and a stipulation that the apartment had to be professionally cleaned upon move-out, using a company approved by Mr. Henderson. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, made me take pictures of everything before we even unpacked a box. I thought she was being overly cautious. I was wrong. For the first year, things were relatively peaceful. The leaky faucet I fixed myself. The sticky door I WD-40'd. The ancient radiator that clanked like a haunted steam engine I learned to ignore. Mr. Henderson was a ghost, only appearing to collect the rent check each month, his face a mask of barely concealed disapproval. Then came the move. We'd found a slightly bigger place, still in the neighborhood but with less peeling paint and fewer suspicious smells. We gave Mr. Henderson 2 months' notice, meticulously cleaned the apartment, and even patched a couple of nail holes even though the lease didn't require it. Sarah had gone full Marie Kondo, and the place practically sparkled. The walkthrough was awkward. Mr. Henderson squinted, poked around with his cane, and made vague noises of discontent. He ran a finger along the top of the refrigerator, found a speck of dust, and sighed dramatically. He didn't say anything outright, but his body language screamed trouble. And then the letter arrived. It was a masterpiece of petty grievances and outright lies. The professional cleaning hadn't been up to par even though we hadn't even hired a cleaning service yet. The excessive wear and tear on the carpets, which were already threadbare when we moved in, required a full replacement. The damaged bathroom tiles a hairline crack that was definitely there before necessitated a costly repair. And of course, there was the light bulb charge apparently. One of the bulbs in the bathroom had burned out sometime between our move out and his inspection. The grand total, more than the entire security deposit. In fact, according to Mr. Henderson, we owed him an additional $300. I called him, ready to calmly explain, to present my photographic evidence, reason with the man. He cut me off mid-sentence. The apartment wasn't left in acceptable condition. That's all there is to it. He hung up. Sarah was livid. This is ridiculous, it's extortion. She pulled out the lease agreement and started highlighting clauses. He can't just make up charges. We have proof, we need to fight this. I wasn't so sure. Fighting seemed like a lot of hassle, a lot of time and effort for what amounted to a few $1,000s. But Sarah was right. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the principle. It was about not letting this miserly old man get away with ripping people off. We started digging. A quick search online revealed a string of similar complaints against Mr. Henderson. Former tenants recounted identical experiences, fabricated damages, inflated cleaning fees, and a landlord who was seemingly impervious to reason. Sarah suggested we talk to a lawyer. I balked. Lawyers are expensive, but after a free consultation, we learned that Mr. Henderson was skating on thin ice. His lease agreement contained several clauses that were likely unenforceable, and his pattern of behavior suggested a deliberate attempt to defraud tenants. The lawyer suggested sending a formal demand letter, threatening legal action if he didn't return the full deposit within 30 days. We sent the letter. Mr. Henderson ignored it. That's when I started to get angry. Not a screaming, irrational anger, but a cold, simmering resentment. He thought he could just bully people, take their money, and get away with it. He saw us as young, naive, and easily intimidated. He was wrong. I started visiting Mr. Henderson's other properties. I knocked on doors, introduced myself as a former tenant, and asked a simple question: have you had any problems with your landlord? The answers were enlightening. Leaky roofs, broken appliances, mold infestations, and a general sense of neglect. One tenant, a single mother with 2 young children, showed me a gaping hole in her ceiling that had been there for months, despite repeated complaints. Another pointed out exposed wiring in the hallway. I started documenting everything. Photos, videos, dates, times, names. I became a one-man investigative unit, fueled by righteous indignation and a growing sense of purpose. One evening, while chatting with a neighbor in my old building, Mrs. Davison, she mentioned a persistent gas smell in the hallway outside her apartment. She'd reported it to Mr. Henderson weeks ago, but he'd brushed it off as nothing to worry about. He said it was probably just the old pipes, she told me, her voice trembling slightly. But it smells stronger every day. I'm afraid to even light a candle. I walked down the hallway and took a deep breath. The smell was unmistakable. It was definitely gas, and it was strong. I went back to my new apartment, my mind racing. I showed Sarah the videos and photos I'd been collecting, the evidence of Mr. Henderson's negligence and disregard for his tenants' safety. "This is insane, Mark," she said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "He's putting people's lives at risk." "I know," I said, "and I don't know what to do." We talked for hours, weighing the options. We could file a lawsuit, but that could take months, even years. We could report the code violations to the city, but that could be a slow and bureaucratic process. In the meantime, people were living in potentially dangerous conditions. Then, Sarah said, "What about the fire department?" "The fire department? Of course. They were trained to deal with gas leaks and other safety hazards. They wouldn't mess around." I hesitated. Calling the fire department felt extreme. But the thought of Mrs. Davison and her neighbors, living in a building that could potentially explode, was unbearable. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. I called the non-emergency line and reported a strong smell of gas in the hallway of Mr. Henderson's building. I gave them the address and apartment number and described the situation as clearly and calmly as I could. I made sure to mention Mrs. Davison's repeated complaints to the landlord. I didn't give my name. Within minutes, sirens were wailing in the distance. I watched from my new apartment window as a fire truck pulled up to my old building. Firefighters in full gear rushed inside. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The building was evacuated. The gas company arrived and shut off the gas. The fire department conducted a thorough inspection. And then, Detective Miller, a calm, professional fire investigator, showed up. He interviewed the tenants, asking them about the gas leak, about their complaints to the landlord, about anything else they might have noticed. He spoke to Mrs. Davison, who nervously recounted her conversations with Mr. Henderson. I watched from a distance, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. I'd done the right thing, I knew that. But I also knew that I'd just opened a can of worms. The next day, the building inspector arrived. He spent hours poking around, examining the wiring, the plumbing, the foundation. He emerged shaking his head. "This place is a disaster," I heard him say to Detective Miller. "There are so many code violations, I don't even know where to start." Mr. Henderson arrived, looking flustered and angry. He confronted Detective Miller, demanding to know what was going on. He spotted me across the street and his face turned a shade of purple I didn't think was humanly possible. "You," he screamed, pointing his cane at me. "You did this, you're the one who called them." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, watching as the walls of Mr. Henderson's empire began to crumble. The local news picked up the story. Headlines screamed about negligent landlord and tenants at risk. Mr. Henderson's name and face were plastered all over the news. Former tenants came forward, sharing their stories of neglect and exploitation. The lawsuit over my security deposit suddenly seemed insignificant. A week later, I received a call from Mr. Henderson's daughter, Brenda. Her voice was tight and strained. "Look, Mark," she said, "my father's being unreasonable. I'm willing to return your full security deposit, plus interest, if you just drop the lawsuit and stop talking to the media." I paused. "That's not enough, Brenda," I said. "This isn't just about the money anymore. It's about holding your father accountable for what he's done." She sighed. "What do you want?" "I want him to fix the problems at his properties," I said. "I want him to treat his tenants with respect. And I want him to apologize." I knew it was a long shot, but I had nothing to lose. In the end, Mr. Henderson never apologized. But he did agree to fix the code violations at his properties. He also agreed to a settlement in my security deposit case, returning the full amount, plus damages and legal fees. The final scene played out in a sterile courtroom. Mr. Henderson, looking pale and defeated, sat slumped in his chair. I stood before the judge, recounting my story. The judge ruled in my favor, praising my diligence and civic-mindedness. As I walked out of the courthouse, Sarah squeezed my hand. You did it, Mark, she said. You actually did it. We moved into our new apartment, a place with no peeling paint, no gas leaks, and a landlord who actually seemed to care about his tenants. But even now, months later, I still think about Mr. Henderson's building. I drive by it occasionally. Sometimes, I see construction workers repairing the roof or the foundation. Other times, it just looks empty and forlorn. I don't know what will happen to Mr. Henderson. He may face fines, lawsuits, even criminal charges. But I do know that he'll never be able to treat his tenants the same way again. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I did the right thing. Was it worth it? Did I go too far? The answer, I think, is yes. It was worth it. Because sometimes, the only way to fight injustice is to fight dirty. Even if it means calling the fire department. Even if it means risking everything.